morning, Danielle.
Good morning, Wally.
Thank you so much for joining us here today.
My pleasure.
We greatly appreciate having you on. Danielle, well, we all know that you are the leader of the official opposition, the Wild Rose Party, here in Alberta. And another portfolio you do hold within the Wild Rose is that of the Aboriginal critic.
Yes, I decided to be Aboriginal critic as soon as I got elected because it seems to me that the Premier of the province should be taking a lead role in discussions with how we can partner with First Nations to be able to address issues on concern. So I thought that the best way for me to be able to build some of those relationships while I have the opportunity of being in opposition was to be the Aboriginal relations critic. And I've had just a wonderful time in the last 2 years meeting chiefs, going to a variety of reserves as well as a variety of events, not only education events, but also Assembly of Treaty Chiefs, and having the opportunity to speak, attend some powwows. So it's been a wonderful couple of years helping to get to understand some of the issues that we face in Alberta.
And you feel that it's really important as the leader of the official opposition to have that strong connection with the Aboriginal community here within the province?
It struck me that when Premier Ralph Klein was in office, one of the things that he always valued and spent a lot of time was maintaining relationships with our First Nations communities. And I think that to me, because I got involved in politics when Premier Klein was in the chair, that has always stuck with me about how important it is that you begin with a relationship. I think oftentimes what happens is that provincial leaders or political leaders make a mistake in their first contact being with a particular band is when they want something. If there's a development that they want to put through, or a pipeline or a transmission line or some kind of development, and then you're all of a sudden sitting at the table with lawyers on both sides. To me, having the relationship first, it begins with an attitude of trust, mutual respect, and understanding. And from there, if an issue comes up that requires some negotiation, then at least you're beginning from a base of friendship as opposed to not knowing where the other party is coming from. So I felt that Premier Klein really took the right approach, and I was hoping that I could take a similar type of approach in building relationships first, because I know that as we develop the province, there's going to be increasing requirement for First Nations businesses to be part of that, First Nations communities certainly to be part of the negotiation and settlement and discussion of routes and siting. And to me, this is really going to be the new frontier in development in Alberta, is making sure that our First Nations communities are integral as being a part of that.
And something you really want to see as well is, them at the helm, when it comes to business.
Clearly, when you look at Fort McKay, for instance, and I may have out-of-date numbers, but one of the first visits I took after I became leader going up to Fort McMurray, it was pointed out to me that Fort McKay businesses have some $800 million worth of contracts with various oil sands companies, even looking at the reclamation of land and turning it into a bison ranch being run, again, by a Fort McKay business. We also have many Métis settlements who are at the forefront of developing resources in their own territories through Aboriginal businesses. That's been, to me, I think, the greatest eye-opener is just how much entrepreneurial activity is taking place among our various First Nations and Métis settlements, as well as the attitude of so many chiefs about looking out to the future and wanting to make sure that the kids get the education and skills that they need so they can be full participants in the economy, either as workers or as running the businesses themselves. To me, that is a really exciting opportunity as we continue to see more development in the north.
Yeah, and the youth is our future, and even within the Aboriginal community as well, those young people someday will become leaders of their own community.
It's true, and there's been some wonderful models of education. When I went to the Sunchild Reserve, for instance, and then have since spoken with a company called SC Cyber Learning, the way in which they are developing a learn-at-your-own-pace type of program with computer technology, making sure that there's access to Aboriginal languages. I believe they've got Cree 10, 20, and 30, so that students are able to learn at their own pace, be able to manage some of the time restrictions that they have in being able to continue with a traditional lifestyle. This is one of the things that they found, is that a lot of kids were falling behind on the traditional curriculum because they were just needing to take extra time with family when they're going out hunting or trapping, and it was delaying their ability to finish the projects. Well, why not just allow students to work at their own pace so that they are able to do both, to be able to live a traditional Aboriginal lifestyle, but then also get the training that they need so that once they have become adults, they have opportunities on that front development as well. And to me, the kind of program that's being developed to create that flexibility has been instrumental. My understanding is that through that program, they're graduating more students from this online access to high school than all other Aboriginal high schools combined. And to me, that is exciting. That, to me, is where we're going to see continued opportunities. The other part, too, of what Sunchild was doing is partnering with a variety of community colleges so that not only the students but also adults returning for adult education could get trained in a trade that was relevant in the area. And to me, that seeing that kind of leadership and innovation with chiefs as well as with the school boards is very, very exciting.
You know, we had the organizers and some of the folks from the program here on our station a couple of weeks ago, and it's quite impressive. And it's nice to see that a lot of the First Nations and Métis communities are taking interest in what they have.
Yeah, and I think that there has just been some wonderful entrepreneurial success stories that have really motivated young people to start thinking about what their opportunities would be. I remember Clarence Louis was brought in from British Columbia to talk to, I believe it was a Pekani conference for education. And one of the things that he talked about is how their reserve has become an economic driver for the entire area. Not only do they have employment for residents on reserve, but they're also providing employment through their winery and their resort and the golf course to off-reserve individuals who are able to come in and take advantage of those opportunities as well. And to me, that is really an incredible model of where I can see many of our Aboriginal communities in Alberta going to. There's so much opportunity, so much resource development, all in the areas where many of our First Nations territories are located. There seems to me to be a new world opening up, especially if we can develop some of the pipeline access to the coast. I think we're still very hopeful that some of those will go ahead, but that then creates a whole new series of opportunities for our northern residents.
Yeah, and again, one of the reasons why you find there needs to be that really close connection, with the government and the Aboriginal communities. You will never be able to get pipelines and major infrastructure built if your starting point is not having a respectful and constructive relationship with First Nations. And I went to British Columbia, Vancouver a week ago to talk about the need for a right-of-way going across our northern territories. And the absolute first starting point has to be discussing with First Nations communities where they think the best place to site a utility corridor would be. I think the approach that we've taken in the past is where essentially it looks like you take a map and a ruler and draw a straight line and then get into really conflict-laden discussions about citing a route. I think in future we've got to do it a different way. Let's begin with trying to ask the question of those who know the landscapes the best, who understand where traditional territory and important ancestral areas are, and then see if we can develop the path first, do the negotiations first, give First Nations communities the opportunity to plan the economic development with us so that we can all benefit from being able to build these kinds of rights of way. I think that when I first proposed this, I did get contacted by a chief who was a former chief who was in the Kitimat area, saying he proposed exactly the same thing to the BC government a number of years ago when Gordon Campbell was premier. So I think there's an appetite there, but what has happened is that many times proponents of projects look at their First Nations consultation obligation as an afterthought, or maybe don't approach it in quite the right way, which ends up destroying the relationship, and then we end up with nothing but conflict. I think that we can take a different approach, and that there's a huge amount of opportunity for us to be able to work in partnership and see our First Nations communities really thriving, and First Nations entrepreneurs and businesses really thriving if we can develop this corridor in the north. Yeah. Now, this coming weekend, and it's already been, celebrated now, is National Aboriginal Day that's coming up here on Saturday. It's quite exciting, for us as First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit community to really showcase our culture and let people know the contributions we had made as Aboriginal people. How important is this day as well, do you think, being the leader of the Wild Rose Party?
I always do try to find opportunities to be able to celebrate on that day as well. I think I'm actually going to be attending a grand entry and powwow at Heritage Park on that day in Calgary. And to me, it's an opportunity for those who don't have First Nations ancestry to be able to be exposed to the traditions, the music, the language, the culture of bands that are right adjacent to areas that are populated or cities and towns. And I think that it's always a wonderful celebration. It also is an opportunity for us to learn about some of the ways in which we continue to have hardships in some of our communities. We have some very, very rich communities, and we spend a lot of time talking about that. But I do know as well that we do face some hardships on communities with high unemployment rates, without proper wastewater infrastructure, the issues of making sure that there's enough dollars flowing through for education and healthcare needs. Those, to me, are part and parcel of a celebration. We celebrate things that are going well, but also be aware that we still have work to do in being able to help make sure that every citizen in the province is able to enjoy the same quality of life. That's what is important to me about it.
Danielle Smith, the leader of the official opposition Wild Rose Party. I want to thank you so much this morning for taking time out of your schedule to speak with us today.
Appreciate the time, Molly. Thank you.